Looking for a way to reconnect and reset? Awaken Pittsburgh offers free guided meditations open to everyone, online and in person, on the first and third Wednesdays, second Saturdays, and third Mondays of each month. Each session includes guided practice, reflection, and space for questions and support. No experience needed. Sign up on Eventbrite and join the community.
Hello friends, my name is Stephanie Romero and I am the founder and executive director of Awaken Pittsburgh. I want to welcome you to our podcast, The Ripple Effect. Awaken Pittsburgh is a nonprofit dedicated to fostering well-being, empathy, and compassion for all by teaching and encouraging mindfulness and meditation practices. I also want to take a moment to let you know that Awaken Pittsburgh offers many other opportunities for practice and connection. For example, you can join our online community, which features a space to more deeply explore the topics we cover with our guests. We have weekly posts to spark thought, practice, and reflection. I hope you will come join us to explore, connect with others, and deepen your practice. You can find out more at awakenpittsburgh.org. We are lucky today to have Annamarie Fernyak on the Ripple Effect podcast. Annamarie is the founder of the mindful education company Mind, Body, Align. She's an award-winning community leader who lives and works to make life better in downtown Mansfield, Ohio. She is the author of The Right Side of Happiness and is an educator, speaker, podcast guest, and writer on building resilience and living mindfully in the present moment as the path to a life of true happiness and contentment. Mind, Body, Align teaches hundreds of students and educators each year how to pay focused attention, practice kindness, and share gratitude. Annamarie is also the co-author of a 32-book series for children and is the vision behind the main character, Tia, a butterfly, and Dwight, a grasshopper, among other delightful inhabitants of a special garden labyrinth. These books teach children skills of self-regulation, how to navigate disagreement, to manage anxiety, and more. So Annamarie, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. I'm excited to deepen our relationship and get to know you better.
Thank you so much, Stephanie, for inviting me. I'm excited to have this conversation.
I always love to ask folks to start and just talk a little bit about what brought them to practice. So maybe take us back to the beginning. What first led you to explore mindfulness, meditation, awareness practices, whatever that is for you?
Gosh, I've always been a person who's been kind of, and I talk a little bit about this in my book, a spiritual seeker. And when I was a child, I was brought up Catholic. So when I was a kid, I was a part of like the Christian youth organizations and all of those different groups that were very Christian oriented. And then when I went to college, I was in a theology course. I went to a Catholic college. I was in a theology course that was taught by a nun. And the thing that was interesting about this theology course is that it was about world religions, which really, going to a Catholic school for 12 years and then going to a Catholic college, I didn't know much about world religions. So I was excited to learn because, of course, I'm in this exploration of spirituality, and learned that her approach to the world religions was extremely open-minded, which was surprising to me because in my family, it was not open-minded about religion. You were a Christian, or, Christian was right and everything else was wrong, was kind of the attitude. And in that class, I learned about Hinduism, and I learned about Buddhism, and I learned about Judaism, and Muslim, the Muslim religion. it was just fascinating to me. And particularly, there was a girl in the class, and I go into detail, I won't go into detail here. There was a girl in the class who was very curious, and she asked lots and lots of questions about religions, and questions that were critical. She was challenging the nun. And I was so surprised because I was always brought up that you just don't challenge authority. So not only did it open my mind to all these religions, but this class also opened my mind to a whole different way of being curious about the world and what that could look like and how to participate in my own like spiritual education. And so, years go by and I'm a voracious reader and I read, read, read. And then I meet the man who becomes my husband. And he invited me to a course called Landmark Forum, which it's a very controversial, I don't even know what you call it, a very controversial, almost cultish kind of way to approach learning and kind of the growth, personal growth. It's based on the EST formula, which was very controversial in the 70s. Um, but what that did was it opened my mind even further. And one of the premises of the Landmark Forum, at least the first course, is that we are making machines, human species. We have this need to make meaning out of everything, and that the world is empty and meaningless is kind of the premise. And what they're doing is they're getting to a place where you question everything that you believe in, so that then you could discover what's really important to you as an individual. So they don't leave you there in this place of empty and meaningless. They help you then to kind of discover or figure out, what is the best way forward for you as an individual. And so then I was in that place. So then I read Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now. And that opened my mind to this idea of present awareness and non-judgment. And that was the beginning, really, of moving into a mindfulness practice. But the process really began when I was young, in this kind of seeking for understanding who I am as a spiritual being.
That's awesome. You and I have some parallel paths that we went on. I was also raised Catholic, 12 years of Catholic school, but it was a high school religion teacher who was a priest who had been a chaplain in Vietnam that taught our world religions class. It was a very progressive Catholic high school. So we had world religions my senior year. And at the end of the class, he said, I've ministered to people of all faiths in my work, and it really doesn't matter what you believe, just do it and do it regularly. That's
Mm-hmm.
the important thing, is that you're actually doing it. And that bust open me, like in the same way you're describing, completely cracked me open, because it was just amazing. His name was Father Anthony. He looked like a military sergeant. He had a buzz cut and he was real kind of tough and gruff and of course wearing his collar, but yeah, that's amazing that you had that experience.
Yes, and you too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I look back on it now, it's like none of it really connected when I was, of course, going through it.
Hmm.
But in the process of writing my book, I was going back and I was really wanting to understand what was my evolution.
Yeah.
And that's when I discovered really a lot of that, and how it literally was like the steps of the stairs that led me to this place. Each one was like the next step to the next step to the next step, to finally now where I just am very confident in my mindfulness practice. And my mindfulness practice has evolved into a place where it feels very unique and special to me.
Yeah. Tell me more about that. So, how did you, Eckhart Tolle, of course, is amazing. We actually, for folks listening, if you have an organization, they will donate books to you. So we receive many, many Eckhart Tolle books, including The Power of Now. There's also a companion journal that's fabulous, and they donate that to us. And when we do programming in community, we hand out his books.
Wow.
Yeah,
I
for
did not
free.
know that.
Yeah, the Eckhart Tolle Foundation will do that. Yeah, so he's near and dear to my heart, and a lot of he has brought a lot of people to practice. He's an amazing figure that we're lucky to have in our world with us. But yeah, so starting with him, then how did your practice like begin? How did it, and you said evolved over the years, so I'd love to hear more about that.
So at the time I owned a retail store. I was an interior designer, and I was in an area of our Rust Belt downtown in Ohio, very Rust Belt, kind of depressed Rust Belt city. I was in an area that was revitalizing, and my storefront was right in the smack dab in the middle of that. So I was super involved in what was happening in the restoration process and the revitalization, as a designer and as a business owner. And there was an empty storefront. I convinced the property owner to open up, to allow me to use it for free as a yoga studio because it was unoccupied. So I was not yoga certified, but I loved yoga. And that was a time when there was maybe one yoga teacher in the community, and there was just no places really to take yoga. So then I offered this studio to her to teach. And I decided that and then I would offer it to other like alternative wellness practitioners. And I decided that because I was so enamored with Eckhart Tolle and I wanted to bring the teachings of Eckhart Tolle into the community, I became, and I don't know what they called it at the time, but they allowed you to become like an Eckhart Tolle ambassador. And they would send you Eckhart Tolle's videos. Every month or maybe every so many months, they'd send you a video. And they had a very, let's see, it was pretty rigid about how you would present this to a community. So I wasn't really a teacher because at the time, Eckhart didn't allow his ambassador, I don't know what the word he used, but I'm going to say ambassador, his ambassadors to teach it. He wanted them he wanted the people, the practitioners, to learn the practices and the philosophies directly from his mouth. So all I did was host a time and show his movies, these videos where he was speaking. And it was once a month, I think we did it. And I did that for about a year. And at the end, part of the stipulation was you weren't supposed to discuss it. So it was you could have a silent practice. You could show the video and that was it. So it felt a little awkward. Like I felt like I wanted to learn from the other people in the group, but according to his rules, you really couldn't do that. So I did that for a long time and I learned a lot about his philosophies and the power of now and his practices. And then I kind of went through a rough phase in my own personal life and was seeking something else. I closed my retail store. I quit my job, the job with revitalization. And I was in that state of like, who am I now? What do I want to do with the rest of my life? And I went to a women's retreat. And I went, so I live in Ohio, just over the border, basically from Canada, right on Lake Erie, essentially 30 miles from the border, really. And I found a woman who was in Canada, Grace Shirako. She's amazing. And she was doing these women retreats. And I didn't know her. I just found her on the internet and decided I'd go. And I showed. So like a week before I was scheduled to leave, I get walking pneumonia. And I call Grace up and I said, Grace, I don't think I can come. Can I come to another retreat? I said, I have walking pneumonia. And she said, Annamarie, I will honor whatever decision you make. However, I want to challenge you that maybe your getting walking pneumonia is your body's way of saying, oh, we're not ready for this next step. And you might want to consider coming anyway. And so I was like, okay. So I went, and it was probably the most impactful 5 days of my life. It was really incredible. She is very much rooted in mindfulness and other things. So she's just she's like a mama bear coach, she wraps her arms around you, and she just says exactly what has to be said for you to move forward. It's like she's got this intuition. So I was with 21 other ladies. It was very, very challenging because I was sick. But I also think being sick made me more pliable or something, more open to what she was teaching. Because I tend to be very critical, very cynical about things. I don't know why, I just am. And so it kind of being sick broke down that little bit of cynicism that I have. And it was very impactful for me. So after that, I decided that I wanted to be a life coach. So I went and I got my certification as a life coach with the Coach Training Institute, CTI, and I became an ACC certified coach. And I was coaching for a little while and really, really getting more and more comfortable in my own mindfulness practice and adding mindfulness to my coaching practice. And then I discovered that really coaching, I felt too responsible for people's experiences with coaching, with individual coaching. And so I was taking on, I'm kind of empathetic. I was taking on too much of what was happening in my clients' worlds, and I was feeling too responsible, and I couldn't do it. So I started doing these group workshops, and they were really focused on mindfulness and being quiet and sitting and self-exploration. So mindfulness as less about a meditative experience and more about a lifestyle. And I just was getting more and more into that. And then I opened up a women's networking facility, like a membership organization called Mind Body Align. And it was geared towards professional women. And I would bring speakers from all over that would talk about alternative wellness practices. And then we had these different special events that were all mindfulness oriented. We had one called Coffee Talk, which was once a month in the morning, which was very, very well received. In fact, the ladies still talk about it when I see them. I really miss Coffee Talk. And I did mindfulness and meditation groups. I hosted mindfulness and meditation groups. I had a couple groups of veterans that I would and all we did was meditate. So I wasn't coaching because I'm not a veteran, so that would be inappropriate. But I would just sit with them, and I would do these guided meditation sessions, and then I would let them talk amongst themselves, and I would listen. So I would just kind of be present for them as they talked. And then we went into COVID. And right before COVID, I was invited to teach mindfulness in a middle school, in our local middle school. And our local school district has a lot of poverty. Like I said, we are an inner city environment, and we have 2 major prisons. So we have a lot of children that are homeless. We have a lot of children that are in the foster care system. And we have a lot of children that have one parent who's in the prison system. So I was invited to teach in this this teacher's health class. Yes, this 3 days in her health class. And during the course of those 3 days, I saw what was happening in the educational system. And I'm at that point, I was in my early 50s. I don't have children. I've never been back to school since I was 18. I had no idea what the school was like. And when I was there those 3 days, it was like a shock to me, shock to my system. And I came back to my team at Mind Body Align. Now, granted, we teach adults. I came back to my team and I said, is there anything we could do to help the schools? And my sister, coincidentally, had been an elementary school teacher for 20 years and had recently quit her job because of anxiety and stress. And I asked her if she would do a feasibility study to see if there was a place for what we could teach in the schools. She did that and came back and said, yes, not only that, but they want to buy a pilot program. And we have a local foundation, which is called Richland County Foundation, that would pay for the pilot program in the elementary school. And so that first year we were in 21 classrooms. So we did not create the curriculum for that school, for that mindfulness. We bought it from Mindful Schools. And my teachers all then were certified through Mindful Schools to teach mindfulness. So that was our foray into it. And our first year teaching mindfulness, that contract year, was when COVID hit. And at that point, I was like, wow, there's so much need. I cut off the adult portion of what I was doing, and we went 100% into the schools. So that's where we are now. After a couple of years, we wrote our own curriculum, which is super cool. It's story-based. And it's more about the everyday mindfulness practice. So it's about a way that you can be mindful in your everyday life. And there's all these lessons for children. And I would say even though there was a team of people that wrote the books, the practice itself that is presented in the books is all about what I feel is kind of my mindfulness practice, which is this living mindfully, living with understanding self-compassion and gratitude and kindness. It's not so much the sitting on a cushion for an hour a day as it is how can you walk the walk in every moment of your life. And when you're not walking the walk, what do you learn from that? So that's kind of what we teach. And that's my evolution into what I'm doing now.
Well, there's so much there that I want to ask you about, but I will just say I can't imagine any elementary age kid that could sit for an hour a day. So good
No.
that you're not asking them to do that.
No, our lessons are only 15 minutes.
Yeah, of course, of course.
And they're really not so much about sitting quietly as they are about really exploring their senses, and their thoughts and their felt sensations.
Absolutely. That's age appropriate. I'm really curious about, having been a teacher for many, many years myself in the school system. What was the thing that you felt most shocked about? Like you described being in the school for 3 days and you were really shocked. Like what was that? What was there for you that was shocking?
I think part of it was just me not being older and being living in a very kind of quiet, calm world. Being in a middle school environment is chaos. So it was chaos all the time. The hallways were chaos. The kids coming and going in the classroom were chaos. Just a lot of yelling and jumping and running but the other thing that I noticed, which of course was probably existed when I was in school, was the sound of the bell. And the sound of the bell was constant. It wasn't just at the beginning and the end of class. There were bells going off all the time. And every time that bell would ring, it was like a shock to my nervous system. The sound of the bell creates anxiety. So the other thing that happened when I was there for those 3 days is they had 2 lockdowns. So to kind of set the stage, I'm sitting in a room with probably, I'm going to say 20 middle school kids, and we're sitting in a circle, which is a vulnerable place for a middle school person to be anyway, sitting in a circle facing your peers. So I recognize that. We're sitting in a circle and we're talking about the mindfulness practice, and the kids are really relaxed and calm. And then a bell goes off. And I didn't recognize anything unusual about that. But the kids are tuned to the bell, right? They know what's going on when. And I could see all the kids, their demeanor somewhat changed. And then I hear a voice over the loudspeaker that says, "Teachers, look at your email." And I thought, what the heck is going on? I had no idea. I'm completely ignorant about the processes in schools. And the teacher reads her email and she comes back and she whispers in my ear. Well, what's happening around the room is the kids are, their physical body positions are changing. The girl next to me curls up in a ball. The heels of her feet go onto the chair. Her head goes down between her knees, and she puts her arms around her like she's giving herself a hug, right? And I'm thinking, what is going on? Well, they knew what was going on, and that was that there was a school incident. So I guess I'd call it a school shooter. It was not a school shooter, but it was somebody with pepper spray, is what it ended up being. But what I saw happening in the classroom was trauma. In that moment, those children were exhibiting signs of trauma. And I was just like heartbroken. When I left that day, the teacher was crying. She's like, "I can't take it anymore. I've got to retire." She said, "I'm retiring at the end of this year." And it was, so not only were the students showing major signs of trauma, but the teacher was also. So that was what made me go back to my team and say, what can we do to help this?
Yeah, that's so real for schools right now today, right? That is, and I know you and I are close in age. Like when I was little and in school, we never had a lockdown. We never had a practice for a lockdown. None of that was real for us. So that, yeah, that really resonates. And part of it, again, I think you and I have such parallel lives, although mine came from being a teacher and wanting to support and help. Like that's part of the impetus for why I started Wake in Pittsburgh, is to be able to work with educators, to be able to work with kids, to help give them techniques to manage the stress of it all, to manage for the teachers the compassion fatigue, the burnout, right? The secondary trauma, all of that. So you're naming something that feels very, very familiar to me. And like you said, people that aren't in schools today just you don't even see it because you don't know. You don't know. Yeah.
I would never have known. My husband and I are fortunate in that we built a very successful company in the city that we live in. And so now we give back quite a bit. We buy buildings, old buildings, we renovate buildings. We're part of the restoration that's happening in our downtown community. And what I realized in that moment at the school is that doing all of that renovation of buildings is meaningless if somebody isn't figuring out how to bring some calm and some safety into the classroom. Because these children are going to grow up and they're not going to be able to start businesses that occupy these buildings, hold jobs that keep a city, thriving.
Yeah, we need the healthy, happy humans, right? To be able to fulfill our own dreams for our futures, right? We need whole, healthy, and happy humans that have those resources and that skill set to be able, just as you're naming, like for me, the work that you're doing, the work that we doing, that is job skills,
It is. It
right?
is workforce development.
It is workforce development. Thank you for the word. That's right, right. That's exactly right. How to manage all of the stressors of the modern world, how to have the skill set to do that,
Hmm.
right? How to have the skill set to do that is so important. I really love this idea of you and your husband renovating buildings and then realizing like kind of like we also need to renovate humans.
Hmm.
Right? We also need to put the time and the energy and the resources into that. The other thing that I'm connecting is you called yourself, your former career was an interior designer, and I feel like that label is almost still true, but instead of the interior designer of the physical spaces, which you just contrasted, right? You're doing the interior design for being a human being. Like you're helping people work with their own interior worlds, right? Their minds, their
That's my sister says the same thing.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome. I love it. I love it. Just, it came to me when you were just contrasting the building and I'm like, but it's like all the interior design of us humans. Well, I guess I would love to just hear, do you have any kind of anecdotes or anything about the impact that you're having? Like, what's a story or an example of some changes you've witnessed of the young people that have gone through your curriculum or the classrooms you've been in? I'd love to hear a little example.
Well, right now we're doing a collaboration with the Buckeye Imagination Museum, which is a children's museum, and Richland Public Health. And we're doing a 2-week summer camp for kindergarten and first grade. And we're teaching our curriculum, our kindergarten, first grade Labyrinth Adventures curriculum. And for me, because I'm never in the classroom, I'm the one that's behind the scenes, editing, helping to create the curriculums, selling the curriculums, doing the business part. And I have teachers that are in the classroom. So this is really one of the rare instances where I'm in the classroom watching the teacher teach and watching the way that the students are reacting. And I'll tell you, it's made it all worthwhile for me. The way the kids behave at the beginning of the week and the way they behave at the end of the week, it's like it's a huge evolution in understanding and in behaviors and in choice making. And I'm trying to think of a specific anecdote of the children, and I'm not so good at remembering those things, but um, it's my one teacher, her name is Brooke. She always comes back with the funniest story. She is the one that's always in the classroom teaching. And one of the stories she was telling us around Christmas was she encouraged the students to create their own uh, basically kind of guided mindfulness practice around the holidays. And one of the students, the mindfulness practice that they did was a mindful eating practice. And it was about eating mashed potatoes. And the student said, you take a deep breath, you dig the spoon in the mashed potatoes really slow, and you feel the weight of the mashed potatoes. And then you plop the mashed potatoes on your plate. It's just, it's a silly thing, but I just thought, wow, that's so interesting because really that is what it's all about. It's just paying attention to something as simple as eating your mashed potatoes. And she went on to say that the student was saying something like, and then you slowly fork the mashed potatoes into your mouth. and you feel the texture and you roll it around and then you swallow it, that particular grade was, I think, fourth and fifth grade. But so it's really fun to watch the students and to see how they're reacting to the lessons. And we do have one young man, this has been a year or so now, and I remember this because Jenny Blue. Jenny Blue used to work here and told us this story. This young man had anxiety, and he was probably around the kindergarten. He had to have been a little older, maybe first grade. And we had taught our curriculum in the Spanish immersion school, which was where he was going to school. And he had a situation where he had to go to the doctor to get a shot. And he's sitting on the examination table, and when the doctor comes in, he's doing the belly breathing, which the way we taught the belly breathing was using a Huberman sphere, if you know what that is. And it's a sphere that opens and closes very softly. And we taught them that if they didn't have the sphere, to use their fingers, and you put all your fingertips and your thumb together, and then you open your hand and make a sphere, and then close your hand and open and close. And he was sitting on the examination table, and he was breathing in and breathing out with his hands. He's breathing, but he was also doing it with his hands, making the sphere. And the doctor walks in and is like, what is he doing? And Jenny, who was with him at the doctor's office, said, well, he's practicing his belly breathing. And he said, belly breathing? And he said, yeah, whenever he gets anxious, he practices his belly breathing, and it helps him to, calm his nervous system. And he goes, wow, I wish all the children would learn these techniques. And I thought that's what it's all about, really, is giving children the tools that they can use so that they can navigate life. They can navigate the stressors of life and make better choices, make choices that are in their best interest.
That's a great story. I love that. I love that. And what an education for the doctor, right?
Yes.
I think that's like sometimes kids are our best teachers. Yeah,
Yes, they are.
that's really, really beautiful. Well, we're going to have to wind down. So there's one more question that I love to ask all of the people that I interview, just because we all have such great knowledge. And you've already done a little bit of this. I always ask if there's like a favorite mindfulness resource that our listeners would want to try out. And that could be your favorite practice. It could be your favorite book that supported you. You did mention already Eckhart Tolle and The Power of Now. Grace Sirocco in Canada. We're all going to Google that and look into her. But yeah, is there anything else that you would say, like if someone's struggling with practice or trying to get started with practice, what is something you recommend regularly?
I think one of the things I used to recommend a lot to the students who would come to my mindfulness classes is Insight Timer. And the reason I like Insight Timer is there's so many different styles, and you can try them all out for free. And so I recommend that people download the Insight Timer app and just start practicing with different teachers and finding one that just feels right to you. And that mindfulness, at the beginning, you can start with just 5 minutes a day. And they have everything on Insight Timer, as far as guided. Eventually, you want to get to a place where you guide yourself through practice. But at the beginning, to have somebody to guide you through, to help you with the language that you use from bringing yourself back from thinking to focusing, it's very helpful. And
I love it.
you might
I
find a
use
teacher
it.
that'll last you forever.
Yeah, I use it. I have it on my phone. It is free. There's always a thing you can pay for, but you don't need to. Yeah.
Right.
And even just the timer part of it, when you do guide yourself, like the gongs are beautiful. You can pick which
Oh,
sound you like,
yeah, I know,
Yeah,
I love it.
it's one of my favorites too. Thank you for sharing that. Well, was there anything that you wanted to say that I didn't ask you about, Annamarie? Was there anything on your mind that you thought, oh, I want to make sure to say this?
No, and thank you so much for inviting me to be on your podcast. It's always wonderful
Absolutely.
talking to you. Such a
Yeah.
kindred spirit.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Every time you were talking, I was like, me too. So it was so good. So good. Yeah. Well, thank you very much for your time and your openness and the heart that you're putting into the work you're doing next door to us.
Yay.
Because
Yep, right
we're
next
so
door.
close. Yeah, we're
Love
so
it.
close. Yeah. Awesome.
Thank you.
Say Something Studios.